have a slight fear that collecting gets too serious when you start collecting the same camera but you buy one because you haven't got that particular colour of camera. I'm heading down that path. The camera I'm going to talk about today is one I've talked about before, and it's the Nikon FM1. I've got a very nice example in black. Well, after buying the one in black, I found this one in silver, and it's exactly the same camera but in silver. But when I tested out the one in black, I used a 50mm lens. This time I'm actually using, as you can see here, AF Nikon 24 to 50mm, and I thought, well, let's test this silver version out with this lens and talk about the camera and talk about the results and see what happens. Right, the Nikon FM came out in 1977, I believe, and this was an interesting time that cameras were beginning to get more automated, but there was quite a mistrust about electronic shutters, as I talked about in my previous video with the black camera. So Nikon ended up making the FM and the FE. The FE had aperture priority and was an electronic shutter. This camera was a mechanical shutter. It has a LED meter in, but the shutter is completely manual. Let's have a look. You can see the nice streamlined body. On top here we have the shutter, the shutter speeds, the aperture obviously on the lens. It's a AI F bayonet. The AI is this index link system, aperture linked system here. It's a really classic design. It's quite similar to a lot of other cameras out at the time. I'm thinking about the Spotmatics, the K1000. Pretty standard in many aspects, but this was extremely well made, and at the time it was advanced, especially with the LED meter. So you do have, instead of a needle meter, you have a red light, both plus and minus, and you've got one in the middle. So I'm checking that I have no film in this camera. A little bit different to open it. You have a small lever here, and you have to move that, then raise the top, and then the back opens. So traditional loading, film onto here, and wind. You can hear that lovely mechanical shutter. And the wind on is very, very smooth. So even if I run out of batteries, I can still use this camera without the meter. It is almost foolproof. It's extremely well made. The lens, there is a slightly strange factor on this lens, is you will notice here, this is the mark when it's at 24, so that's wide angle, and if I've got infinity, the infinity mark would be there, where at 50 the infinity is here. And that I found a bit strange when I first used the lens. The lens didn't have the greatest reputation at the time of the launch of the lens. From my memory, came later. I think this lens was actually launched in 1987, and is actually a AF lens, so can be used on a automatic focusing camera. Quite interesting on these Nikon that there's a little prong at the back here, and when the camera goes onto an automatic camera, that will enable the automatic focusing on the lens to be used. But this is a manual camera, so that is not appropriate. To put the lens back, we must make sure the marks match up. So in order to use the camera, obviously load, view, focus, you have to to engage the meter, this little rind on has to be pulled out, blinding you if you are right-eyed like I am, and then the meter will operate and off you go. Apart from the design of the rind here, I think these are absolutely super cameras. Let's see if it performed, and let's see how the lens performed when I took this camera out to test. I tested this film out at Corfe Castle, and as I said, I hadn't used this camera before. Or have I? Good question. Because there was a tiny bit of a leak of light sometimes on the left hand side. On these images it's absolutely fine. This is the station, and the lens, this is at 24mm, and it's a really effective lens, and it's sharp, and actually I got on far better with it this time than when I used it once before. I did use this lens last winter, and again this is absolutely fine. I'm using a yellow filter. I wanted to try to get a dramatic skyline against the castle, and it sort of worked, but didn't work as well as I was hoping. Back to the steam engine, it's reversed here, and this is absolutely fine. Again, the lens is perfectly sharp, and I was quite pleased with the lens. As I said, the only problem was I did have a slight issue with the camera, and I think on this image coming up, yes, you can see somehow there's some light getting in on the left hand side, and that happened on the next image as well. It could be a slightly lazy shutter. I'll have to look into it. The joys of using old cameras. Thank you for watching, and it's bye for now.